of the president. So this was a lecture given by a Dr. John W. Grant at Hillsdale College that I just kind of adapted and took a little and added some for purposes of this class. Hillsdale College is out east. It's, I believe, the only institution of higher learning in the country that doesn't take any federal money. So it's a good school. So we're looking at why Americans should study the president's war powers. Why is it so important? What's the thing here? So the meaning of the constitutional text as it relates to the war power specifically. So the power that the Constitution gives the president to be commander-in-chief and the situations in which it gives him the power to do that. The president's conduct of foreign policy. Now, foreign policy, if you watch the vice presidential debate, Senator Harris had it pretty well right. It's when you boil it down to its most basic element, foreign policy is just relationships. So the president's conduct of relationships with other countries in a general way. And foreign policy, again, really it depends on the president, how that's exercised, carried out, viewed. President Trump has a vastly different foreign policy than President Obama did. So how presidents have viewed their role in U.S. foreign affairs, again, this varies from president to president. What justice means, man, that's going to be a good topic of discussion. What does justice mean to a president, and how that's affected how presidents conduct war throughout time. So we begin with the social compact theory. And again, I am very much aware that there are other names for this. This is the name that's going to be on your test, so get used to referring to it as the social compact theory. So the voluntary agreement among individuals by which organized society is brought into being and invested with the right to secure mutual protection and welfare or to regulate the relations among its members. So this is a agreement that you kind of make just by the virtue of being born, that you're going to conform to the rules and expectations that have already been laid out for you, that you didn't necessarily have a say in, and that you're going to behave yourself. You also have the right to organize, have mutual protection, maybe through a police department, maybe through a neighborhood watch, regulate relations among its members. All right, so how are we going to keep the peace in a society? That's a question we're trying to figure out right now. So the founders believed that all men were created equal and endowed with natural rights. And these natural rights are things like that you have a right to your life, you have a right to property, and maintaining the property that you own. You have the natural right to speak freely or not to speak. Negative rights are also natural rights. And they thought that the government should exist and does exist only to protect these natural rights. So that's why if you go to, and my memory might just be totally playing tricks on me here, but if you go to the Capitol and look at the Constitution, it's only 4 pages long. That might be including the Declaration of Independence. The federal government was by no means supposed to be this big Leviathan thing that we have now. That is just a fact. So they thought, again, that a legitimate government exists to secure natural rights through the consent of the governed because all men are created equal. Government needs our consent. So I'll have a one-sided discussion about this. Is the government legitimate this is what I would ask if I could talk to you all. Is the government legitimate, even though none of us consented to it? Well, Friday in class, the 10 a.m. class said yes, because we're born into the system. Again, going back to the social compact theory. Yes, because we vote. Yes, because we use the roads and visit hospitals and do all these things that we do on a day-to-day basis that the government helps pay for, the government's involved in. Yes, we consent to the government because we're listening to you right now, Mr. Parker. I'm in the public sector in a kind of lateral way. I am a state employee in a very kind of lateral way. So we do consent to the government because of those things. Now, on the other side, did anybody sign the Constitution that's living today? Did anybody really, what about the people who maybe didn't vote for Donald Trump? Maybe, what about the people who didn't vote for Pritzker? Is that, since it isn't the representation they want, is that legitimate consent? And I both views are perfectly valid. I mean, perfectly valid. You could make great arguments on either side of this. So the founders viewed government as a compact between equals. So we live under, nominally, again, this is the system as it was meant to be against the system that we have. And man, what a chasm between the two. Where we all live under a set of impartial laws to secure our natural rights, to secure the common good. And these are secured primarily through the criminal and civil law. And criminal and civil law back then was generally a thing that was handled by the states. So what is foreign policy? Again, as I said, as Senator Harris said, relationships. So how our rights are secured in relation to other nations. So how we, get our stuff that we, as the United States, feel important across in the international arena. And since this is something that should be of concern to everybody, the founders made darn sure that this fell within the province of the federal government. So relationships with other countries, how our rights are secured in relation to other nations. And this is, if you become a political science major, American foreign policy is a whole class, a whole 16-week class. Even if you want to just dip your toes in a little bit, I'd encourage you maybe to sign up for international relations with me next semester, because we do talk a little more in depth about foreign policy, since it does, by its nature, play a role in international relations. So our social compact is exclusive. Our government, our military, our state governments, they're only meant to secure the rights of American citizens. We don't have a duty to secure the rights of foreigners. There is a moral obligation, to be sure. Certainly, there is a moral obligation sometimes, to be sure. So, like when the video that you hopefully watched with Lex Green about Washington's farewell, he and I talked about World War II. Certainly, there was a moral obligation for Americans to go over. France didn't want to be Germany. Britain needed help. There were the concentration camps. It needed to be sorted out. we have to respect the rights. We're not under an obligation to secure them. So the text of the Constitution does attempt to embody the social compact theory and make it effective. So the key provisions there relating to the presidency and war powers in particular can be found in Article 2 and Article 1, Section 8. So are there moral wars? Yeah, definitely there are. But this argument, again, could be made from many different ways. And why I've chosen to include this is really just because I don't think, there's no thinking involved. I'm fair certain that you guys have not been taught this in this way. So I'm all for expanding minds, putting new ideas in front of you. So, are there moral wars? Do we have a duty to help foreigners? In this guy in Hillsdale, in particular, their government department, they try to really, even more than I do, believe it or not, really teach the Constitution, look at things from a constitutional perspective down the line. So somebody, this inspired a great discussion a couple semesters ago. Somebody said to me, the American Revolution was the last moral war that we fought. And they said, that's a valid point. I asked for an explanation. They said, well, that was the last time that we, as Americans, were using our own military, our own blood, sweat, and tears to secure our nation and the rights of our citizens from a foreign power, which Great Britain was at that point. If you look at it that way, yeah. I mean, that certainly is a valid point of view. The World War II example, that's another very valid point of view. So what I'm getting at, there's no real right or wrong answer to a lot of these questions. It's up to the president at the time to decide what is right, what's wrong, what's best for the United States of America. And that is why these war powers are so important and why I'm harping on them so much. So presidents' war powers can't be understood just totally in a vacuum. We have to talk about Congress. Congress has to be looped in here because they have Congress and the president, all 536 of them, 535 in the House and Senate, and one president, have concurrent jurisdiction over foreign affairs. It's a check and balance. Congress declares war, then the president can exercise his role as commander-in-chief if you're looking at the Constitution. The Congress can also choke off money to the military, and that's the power of the purse. If they feel maybe the president is abusing his prerogative. So the primary job, again, of the president, because he is an executive, the chief executive, is to make sure that the laws that the Congress passes are faithfully executed. So he also has commander-in-chief powers. I didn't mention this a moment ago, but he can make treaties also. But the treaty thing is also done in conjunction with the Senate. So Congress should be declaring war. Congress should be initiating hostilities if they're needed to. Congress should be raising armies. Congress should be making regulations regarding captures at sea. Again, this is the system that was designed for us and how things are now, which again, that's a 16-week class. More than that, if you look over my, let's see, if you look over my shoulder there, that's my master's degree. That's about 6 years at school, not to get the master's degree, but in total. And I'm still not 100% clear on how it came to this. So if any one of you could tell me, I think you should be awarded a doctorate on the spot. So what did the framers intend in regard to the president's power of war and foreign policy? So in Federalist 69, Hamilton really stresses a limited basic role for the president. You have to remember, they had just fought a war against a tyrannical king who wanted to impose his will on people who wanted freedom at that point and to no longer be associated with the British Empire. So they wanted someone that could easily be kept in check. George III and his ancestors really could make war unilaterally, meaning by themselves, meaning they could wake up one day and say, we are at war with France, and people would mobilize and start going. The president, though, has to, or had to, work with Congress to achieve that same end.